I'm showing myself the ways. I'm showing myself not days. These are the ones who should pray. I'm showing myself okay. So, Barak Bashad, may the blessings be. Well, I mean, ours perfectly like that, but the 26th of the 28th of the 6th month of 1435. Formula 2 Technique and Ek Dream 1 Discourses. Lesson 3. Lesson 3. The Ways of the Dream Master. The 15th month's Discourses in Eckankar is preceded on page 52 of the Ek Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp by an illustration of a Pegasus on its hind legs and possibly at the edge of a cliff as a symbol. This is presented as a symbol of spiritual flight, but can't there literally be beings we may take soul travel upon, as some beings can be used for physical travel? Eckankar professes to draw both the curious and the lonely on page 53. It's interesting when I look into Unicult that they literally list the people that you would think vulnerable to join a cult in that. What does joining any path do to us? Is it the means by which God cleanses our innermost being and outwards? Does life take on new meaning through being on a new path? What good is it to accept a mediator by declaring such as a Mahanta as a dream master? Why should it be necessary to accept a living Eckmaster into this role? Do we have to have others point out how profound what we have gained by changing our lives is, or will we know all on our own? Sometimes we do need reminded how insightful dream study can be. Eckankar is a bit for the ethnocentric American. If you think the inordinate focus on American history as guidance for the whole world, that was allegedly specifically engineered by so-called Ek masters and other Ek adepts. On to page 54, it's the story of Abraham Lincoln's recurring dreams during the Civil War of 1861 to 1865 of the Common Era. Before major battles, he'd dream of a warship approaching a darkened shore. Abraham Lincoln always realized how important these battles were. It was a civil war, and he would have known he was going to receive messengers of war and face important battles frequently enough. The dreams may have had no actual outcome on the Civil War. Any psychology student would tell you that dreams include reworking of what is thought about during the day. If karma means action, that is truly a continuance or working out of it in the dream state. Then one could say dreams are a way of working out karma. But few would think that a Mahanta, living Eckmaster, is the dream master of anyone, or otherwise the doer of these things. Al-Quran Surah 3:13 hints at a different story of a vision, a battle, that actually influenced the outcome and still encourages visionaries. It was not only of what became victory, but it was not for a side with mixed intentions for going to war. Al-Quran Surah 3, Ayat 30. In Al-Quran Surah 3, Ayat 30, one finds mention of the good and evil deeds going with you. Eckankar would refer to the debts as sunspots upon a soul. I would agree with the idea that a true spiritual teacher's job is to show how to undo the mistakes of life. The next verse of Al-Quran mentions following God's messenger of the age as a sign of love of God and a way to God's forgiveness and mercy. Eckankar argues with that in some way. Why do we have to be visited in dreams by alleged Satgurus, the true ones who bring out of darkness into light? How can any creation travel through all time and space in dreams? Remember this icon, that's why they have Harold Klemp in the middle of it, because Harold Klemp is supposed to be in and beyond all the realms of God, which doesn't. Wouldn't this be like Zurvan of the ancient Persians, or some other concept of God beyond time and space? People may have dreamt about whomever leads Eckankar, always American, thus far, or Rebazar Tarz, who is said to physically be in Afghanistan, but that doesn't mean they were taught by anything but their memory or concept of them. The section called How the Master Removes Karma says that the problems arise when the work is only internal without outer spiritual study and practice. As true as that may be, isn't it the student's own hero deeds that get the work done, regardless of any perceived help from a creation? It's page 55 of the ECK 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp. Correct about a spiritual battle taking place with entities that form bonds between their negative presence and people? The difference is that it would seem that battle in our being is entirely ours, and no one can do it for us. The church, this is from Kirk, which is the Scottish word for hero shrine, the church belief in actions of others counting for us by merely accepting or acknowledging them as true seems to be overthrown by the fact that certain personal feats always seem to be required too. There are always beliefs and practices that will help to some degree in any spiritual path. The question is how much. Can't the results be more in first-hand experience than being wholly accepted as unknown? The personal responsibility for one's deeds is a valid purpose of Eckankar, listed on page 56 of the Eckankar 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp. This is a truth of both more and less true spiritual paths. You cannot avoid karma in the old sense, and moralizing the concept has serious theological issues, though. The religious person, or even the secularist, who allows himself a judgment, would believe or even find out that it makes a difference what one does things in the name of. Al-Quran Surah 6, Ayat 136 makes a good point about those who offer to false gods, Ek as Holy Spirit and Mahanta as embodiment in the case of Eckankar, and end up giving what would have been dedicated to God were they not to do things in the name of partners. If Sugmad is God as a noun and verb, if Sugmad is God as a noun and Ek is God as a verb, then doing the things in the name of God is a sound practice. There is more to being liberated through your joy and spiritual life, but that is a basic. Now, in Aramea, Yahweh, and Alu, Alha, Alhia, all those words mean God as a noun and verb. And of course, in Arabic, you have God as a noun and verb when you say a law. But in Eckankar, they've kind of divided the two, and you don't know if they're talking about not even God sometimes when they divide the two. And it's clear that that Ek and Sugmod can both be used like that, but Sugmod generally not. You think of, but then, they talk about Sugmod of the 10th plane, like Sugmod something like a being that's not omnipresent. But that's a belief. People say things about God, call him Father, and all sorts of things. So when one dreams that you were flying over a family member's vehicle with the chosen spiritual master, it doesn't mean that is how you saved your family member from a car wreck a year later, no matter what you thought to do in the dream. If the intuitive soul, called Nasima in Arabi, is much larger than the human body, are somehow shared, are connected with others, then there may be truth in people feeling the presence of those not there, though. Revealed religion teaches against any being tested beyond what one can succeed at or atone for wrong, at the very least. Page 58 of the Ek Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp sides with this dogma on divine will only allowing what can cause progress, if we so choose. Another dreamer had dreams of different roads that Harold Klemp teaches mean life before being a member. If Eckankar Corporation, the first 2 years before attaining the second initiation and afterwards, in this context of being trapped on a washed out road, makes sense as losing touch with one's old religious system. The damaged but present road can mean the difficulty of Eckankar even after being in the first circle of initiation. What is the real reason for the increased difficulty or maintained difficulty of life in Eckankar members? Blaming it on being ready to deal with difficulty from alleged past lives seems to give members meaning to the sufferings in life. The dream of smooth driving underwater makes sense as being fully immersed in a spiritual path after a further commitment to it. In Islam, that may be seen to be learning and becoming adapted to maintaining the practices. In this dream, one may say that person is no longer resisting Eckankar, but is unconscious of the true reality of it. Remember my chart. Someone was really complaining about the chart that I use in the meme. That's like, oh, people mislead you with charts. Like, have you read the chart? Are you saying that, I'm asking the question, are these psychological realms? Is the second through 10th plane or whatever you call it, are these, is this psychology in reality rather than spiritual realms? I ask the questions. Do people want to? It's up to my viewer to judge what I'm saying. And certainly, comment, question, like whatever. I want responses, and if my channel becomes so full of responses that I can't respond to them all, and people are interacting with each other, that's great. That's certainly something I welcome. Whether or not you agree with what I have to say. Dreams full of emotions and feelings are said to be of the astral plane. Whether or not this is an actual separate realm from the physical plane, these aspects of dreams and visions can be very important to look at. Other than being told such by Eckankar works and members, there is no reason that can connect to a belief that the living Eckmaster weaves anyone's dreams, visions, or ordinary life. Page 59 of the Ek Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp does speak truth about insights into ourselves being opportunities to break cycles of action. Another story is told of someone who dreamt about visiting the Eckankar Spiritual Center on the spiritual campus of Chanhassen, Minnesota. Harold Klemp calls it the astral plane because he denies the very same loss of size and bulk that he describes in earlier works and admits it is caused by mistakes in eating that he knows of ahead of time. Harold Klemp, for example, can't eat the bleached breads and the dairy and the chemically treated animals. So, but does he abstain? No, I think he said on a conference that he's basically given up on that and said, "I'm going to eat an average of half a pound of chicken a day." So rather than trying to abstain, he's just, oh heck, I'm going to indulge. I only have to get up here and talk twice a year, anyways. How can health problems of one's own choosing, with prior knowledge of what one can't get away with, be the actions of a Mahanta, if such is supposed to be the most conscious person on earth? In the dream, vitality returned to Harold Klemp as he was there in the spiritual services department. Was this the dreamer realizing that Harold Klemp is small, insignificant, and weak? Or is page 60 of that Dream 1 Discourses correct in saying that is how the dreamer saw himself? Yeah, any of the negative things that seem to be said about Harold Klemp, it's like, oh, no, it's really about you. You're the one that's... you got to be careful about your spiritual leaders demeaning you. Yes, if there's ignorance or evil, I'm going to point it out, but I'm going to offer an alternative, and I'm not going to say, hey, I'm not devaluing people as a whole. Psychedelic experiences, like the dreams most remember, can give way to metaphysical experiences. Our inner life can include and transcend our regular life, and it is important to pay attention and even study what we experience. Dream travel and soul travel are not always the same as lucid dreaming. The level of control one has over the visionary experience is not the distinguishing factor. What is then? Other than personal interpretation and saying one feels real or realer than regular life, is the difference in other Eckankar works. Can the beings we see in our dreams be actual instead of symbolic of things? Eckankar seems to say yes, when it is their particular mythological constructs, but implies that things like Pegasus, the winged horse of Greek mythology, is but a symbol of soul on page 60 of the Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp. Sometimes, Darwin Gross had a list, which I guess is gone for the ages. I don't know if anybody living knows it, but he came up with a list of who the 971 Eckmasters supposedly were before him. So there was a set of paintings and stuff that they said, and here's the whole lineage. But one thing that we do find happening under Harold Klemp is that where there's gaps in Paul Twitchell's work, because there's a lot less than 970 before him, that he's claiming, the mythological ones, the ones that can't be verified as historical entities, being leading Eckankar at the very least. If something becomes popular enough, maybe they'll have a Eckankar version of this entity. But the story of someone else's dream follows. This person dreamt he was on a walk and saw himself pursued by the angry. The account makes him seem naive to actually need an inner voice to provoke running away. Pegasus showed up, and he escaped to enjoy the view more from above. They were hurled and shot at whenever they approached the ground. So they took flight again. To me, this represents the sort of detachment of the worldly and spiritual that is fundamental to even not Christian churches and Manichaeism. This reminds me of the stories of Thor's eight-legged steed, Sleipnir, but the symbolism is the sort of curses returning upon the sender talk, or the returning of karma upon those who wish ill upon the members of Eckankar. Is opposition to Eckankar really opposed by any spiritual forces except the souls of members? The dreamer awoke with the lyrics to "You are the wind beneath my wings." You are the wind beneath my wings. I'm not sure of the tone. By Jeff Silbar and Larry Henley stuck in his head. Isn't it better to think that this is overindulgence in entertainment music rather than thinking this refers to Ek supporting his soul? If Ek is God as a verb, wouldn't all light be God's? What then would Ek be if we say some are protected by the light of Ek? The hostility of others is not the dark forces of our own barriers of consciousness, but this makes sense coming from a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic like Harold Klemp. The dream may be about overcoming, but the idea that escaping and having something else fight our battles seems the opposite of being fearless. God may create and allow light and sound, but I would hardly consider compulsively remembering a song one has heard before as a special manifestation of music of God. Prophets like Muhammad, Moses, Zoroaster, and the other sent ones heard the sound of God in that fashion. The discourse seems to be engineering dreams upon leaving the body through the crown of the head and riding winged horses. The story of a woman who had a soul travel experience in that way is on page 62 of the Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp. She rode to a sandbar and entered a cave with violin music like tinkling bells. Paul Twitchell said these were the sounds of the eighth, seven if the etheric plane is thought of as the higher part of the mental plane, and second plane. Under Harold Klemp's rule of Eckankar, that is, the seventh, this is the eighth, when the etheric plane is counted as a separate plane than the mental plane, and the third plane. She watched an orchestra there, and was hypnotized. Being spellbound by frivolity is considered to be heavenly to some, but the entrapment of the inner effect of the devils by others. Is a dream about floating on a cloud more spiritual or more a chemical reaction in the brain that brings peace and cloudy phosphates? He saw his life as a jungle below the mountain he imagined to separate himself from his ordinary life and attain a detached view of it. Shouldn't spirituality be an embrace of life rather than an escape? He dreamt of Harold Klemp granting him license to ascend as much as he wanted. He did as told and found it more and more difficult to have inner balance. Is Harold Klemp right on page 63 of the Dream 1 Discourses in saying he was going where he needed more and more self-discipline? Could it really mean that advancement in Eckankar as a believer is to be more and more detached from reality as he had less connection to matter? Galatians, Apros, Galatas, Epistola, Palu 6:8 would agree with Harold Klemp on this one. I don't think any of the monotheist prophets would have agreed, though. Does the material world distract us from spiritual matters? The truly religious and not merely churchy would tell us it doesn't have to. Al-Quran, Surah 3, 8:14 affirms that The worldly things are supposed to be attractive, but the spiritual abode is far superior to the lower worlds. Harold Klemp sort of agrees as it being the means to the ends, but fails to see how both can be blended in the way the ancients used to hold as a religious ideal. Upon that point is the final story of Lesson 3, The Ways of the Dream Master. One woman dreamt, before joining Eckankar, that she had a home on the inner planes and was taking a friend to see it. Apparently, the inner worlds of Eckankar are a collective unconscious that we all share. But this reeks of a degree of universalism that seems a bit xenophobic at times. They admired the nice homes and grounds along the way and turned down an invitation from a pleasing woman resting on a balcony. But they continued till they were at her inner home. There can be merit to sticking to one's path despite perceived alluring qualities outside it. She was bathed in white light there. Eckankar does white light and other techniques of light visualization. Does the Golden Dawn have its origins in Eckankar, or does Eckankar have Golden Dawn roots? Eckankar works have mentioned the Golden Dawn. This dream is interpreted as being her home in Eckankar on page 63 of the Ek Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp. And Formula 2 will continue this discourse with another bit. Barak Bashad, may the blessings be.